Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caden Kubler, and we are live here at Radio Row here in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59 between the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles. We have a great matchup on our hands. We know what both of these teams are chasing. For the Eagles, they're chasing revenge for 2 years ago when they lost to the Chiefs, when Jalen Hurts had this tremendous performance, and we saw him go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. But this year has been a different story. We saw a team that was 2-2 at one point, and a lot of people criticizing Nick Sirianni and this entire team and this offense because the passing numbers weren't there. But this team is back in the Super Bowl, and they've been playing at an unbelievable level. And then on the other side, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, led by a quarterback who is making a case to be the greatest of all time at the end of the day. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I said it. He's making a case to become the greatest quarterback in NFL history. And this Chiefs team is putting on a show. They're trying to become the best dynasty of all time. Now, we know that they have a lot to catch up to and get up to with the Patriots here, but Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs have been unbelievable. They have now won 3 Super Bowls. They are chasing this three-peat, the only team in NFL history to try and three-peat, and they're only 60 minutes away from doing so. And it's been incredible to watch with how they're winning so far this year. They've been winning in very close ways, and that hasn't been necessarily going over very well with everybody in the media. You see a lot of people getting very frustrated at this team with the way that they're winning and the way that they're so close in these games. But we know the defense is going to show up with Steve Spagnuolo. It showed up in that Buffalo game. It showed up against the Texans. You look at late in the game when Spags and this defense were back up against the wall with Josh Allen with an opportunity to go beat Kansas City. Back against the wall. They had to get a stop. They had to get it done. Spagnuolo cooks up that 4th down blitz. They get it done. Chiefs win. They're back in the Super Bowl, and that's the style that they've been winning this entire season. They've been playing a high level of defense, and we know that the offense, no matter who they have out there, they're going to get it done as long as number 15 is under center. And I asked Andy Reid this last night because it was opening night, and we saw all these great superstar studs everywhere, and it's always just such a fun event to go down to opening night. My buddy and I, Adam, he's my camera guy, we went down there, talked to all these guys, and Andy Reid, I asked him, how have you guys had so much success with this nucleus of you, Travis, and Patrick? And he was like, as long as those guys are there, we're going to keep winning football games. And that's truly what it's been. As long as number 15 and 87 are on the field and Andy Reid is there, they're going to win football games. They're going to win football games. And that's what they've been doing. And it's been incredible to watch, and how they're only 60 minutes away from what I said is making history, and that's how great Patrick Mahomes is. And there's been a lot of turnaround on this team. That was kind of one of the things that I was focusing on with this Kansas City Chiefs team was, okay, you look at the injury of Hollywood Brown. You look at the injury of Rashee Rice when Mahomes crashed into his leg. They had to go get Juju Smith-Schuster. They had to go get other weapons on the outside, and that's how they made it work. And for the Chiefs, they've been getting it done at a very high level, even though they've had so much turnaround. And that's one of the things that I've been focusing on so much. We also saw Pacheco go down with this injury. We saw Kareem Hunt, a guy that was formerly with the Kansas City Chiefs, who really has been redefining the running back position. We saw him come back to this Kansas City Chiefs team, almost rushed for 1,000 rushing yards. He was on his couch at week 2. Comes back in to this Kansas City Chiefs team, and you have to look at this Andy Reid-led squad and be like, man, his ability to have all of this turnaround with Pacheco, with Kareem Hunt, with Hollywood Brown, with Juju Smith-Schuster, with Xavier Worthy season. He's chasing his 4th ever title, his 3rd consecutive Super Bowl, and he's getting really close to Tom Brady. That's a big-time debate that everyone's seeing right now is Patrick Mahomes already catching Tom Brady? Is he already at that point where Tom Brady's at? I'm not ready to say that he's the GOAT if he hits this three-peat, in my opinion. I still think he has a little bit more work to do, but I've been talking about this on my radio show a little bit this year. I think he has a legitimate resume. I think he has a legitimate case to be the greatest of all time if he three-peats, just due to the fact that he's the first ever quarterback to do so in NFL history. But Pat, he's just been so unbelievable throughout his entire career. Last year it was, okay, let's criticize this guy because he doesn't have the weapons. Let's criticize him because he hasn't been putting up these flashy stats like we saw early on in his career with Tyreek Hill and with Travis Kelce and with Kareem Hunt early on when he was winning the MVP and when he was throwing for 5,000 passing yards and almost 50 touchdowns. That's what they used to be. This team has evolved into a squad that's going to be so physically dominant. They're going to dominate you on the line of scrimmage. They're going to dominate you running the football. They're going to get to that play action game, and then they're going to dominate you up front defensively. Chris Jones, he wasn't even going to be on this team a few years ago. He originally wanted to get traded, and he said, all right, I'm done with the Chiefs team. They franchise tagged him. They were very lucky to get him back for one more season, and they franchise tagged him. And now he was back with this squad, and man, he has just been this physical monster up front for this team every single year. And now we see George Karlaftis up there, a guy that in his third year is chasing his third ever Super Bowl as well. Talk about a resume on hand, but you have to look at Steve Spagnuolo as one of these Hall of Fame defensive coordinators that's always going to have his guys ready to go. And that's where I'm asking myself, can Jalen Hurts rise up in the biggest moments? Jalen Hurts and this Philadelphia Eagles squad have a massive monkey on their back. We saw this team start slow, like I mentioned earlier in the show. They started slow at 2-2, and the passing numbers have been down. A.J. Brown line at certain points of this season. Devontae Smith and him, they were both kind of on the sideline at points, on the bench talking, man, what's going on with this offense? What's going on with this passing game? Can they get it done? The numbers weren't there. Their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, he's now going to go probably leave to be the Saints head coach. What's wrong with this offense this year? What's wrong with this offense this year is that Saquon Barkley is the most unstoppable player in football, and everybody wants to micro-analyze this Eagles team. Can they get it done passing the football? Can they get it done when Jalen Hurts is called on in the biggest moments? And in my opinion, when I watched that NFC Championship game against the Commanders, I thought Jalen Hurts looked phenomenal, to be quite honest. I know he had over 250 passing yards, had a few rushing touchdowns, had that long one, but Jalen Hurts, I believe in him to get it done at a high level. We saw in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, he went toe-to-toe with Mahomes, had 3 rushing touchdowns, had a passing touchdown. He had over 300 passing yards. And now this team has Saquon Barkley, a guy that was the 9th ever player in NFL history to run for 2,000 yards. He was taking up all the production on this offense, and it's really a pick-your-poison type of team that this Philadelphia Eagles offense has become. It's like, okay, do we want to stop Jalen Hurts and this passing attack with the weapons on the outside with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert? Or do we want to stop this running game with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts also in the read option game? Do we want to stop that? And not to mention, this is one of the best offensive lines in football that can dominate you up front, that can be absolutely unbelievable. And that's what I think makes this team so tough. They can really beat you in multiple ways, running the football and passing the football. And on the defensive side is where I've been the most impressed. And I know it's hard to say because you have a guy that's rushing for 2,000 yards, might be the offensive player of the year. He was making a legitimate shot at potentially being the MVP. But I'm looking at this team defensively. The turnaround that they had with the secondary completely turning it around, with Vic Fangio turning around this defense. Last year, if you guys would remember, this was one of the worst secondaries in football. They were getting torched. It was really, this team was heavily reliant on Jalen Hurts and this passing attack to keep them in every game. And we saw the Giants, the Commanders, a lot of these bad squads last year were keeping it very close in these games that shouldn't have been this way for a squad that was just in the Super Bowl. Now this year, with Vic Fangio, the new defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's completely turned the secondary around. They were the 3rd worst in terms of yards per game last year in the NFL. Now, this year, they are number 1 in the NFL. And yes, Vic Fangio has played a massive part in this entire defense and what the secondary has done. But you have to look at Darius Slay taking these 2 rookie corners and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean under his wing and saying, guys, get behind me. We're going to start playing a new brand of football. We're going to start playing better for this entire team, because it's like if they can stop the passing game, this team is going to be a Super Bowl squad, and that's why they're here right now. And another part of this defense, along with these young guys that have stepped up in the secondary, have been the young guys on this defensive line that have stepped up. We know the veteran presence that Brandon Graham has brought, and I talked to him about this at opening night last night. Let's look at Nolan Smith. Let's look at Jalen Carter. You have so many young guys on this defensive line that have taken a massive step forward and have really improved their game, and that's why this Philadelphia defense is so good, because not only can they get it done in the secondary now with these young guys, they have the young pieces there. They now have these young pieces on the defensive line that are so unbelievable, and it makes this team so fun to watch because Jordan Davis, we saw him in the team hotel. This dude is a freak of nature. He is massive. Like, having a guy that is so agile, and his versatility rushing the passer with his bull rush and his swim move on the inside, him being that close to the quarterback, that's a scary sight. That's a scary sight for Mahomes, and we know that everybody's like, okay, the way to stop Mahomes is to cage rush him, which if you don't know what cage rushing somebody is, it's when you are keeping your gap integrity, the defensive line is, and you're keeping him inside of the pocket. And that's what they wanted to do with Mahomes. That's what teams' game plans have been with him. Hey, if you can keep him in the pocket, avoid him from getting outside and making plays, making Mahomes magic, as I'll say, making plays with his legs, and that's when he finds Travis Kelce in the scramble drill. If you can avoid that, that's where you're going to be the best with this Chiefs squad, because Mahomes, that's when you're going to be at the highest level of stopping that squad. And that's where I just feel like the Chiefs are the most beatable. But at the end of the day, number 15 is just this unstoppable juggernaut that I can never fade. I can never get behind him. So right now, talking to you guys on Tuesday after talking to the players yesterday, I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. What Patrick Mahomes has done time in and time again. 2 years ago, they were the underdog. Nobody counted him. Nobody really gave him a good shot. They were down 10 points at halftime, and he had to single-handedly turn the squad around on a bad ankle, if you guys remember. On a bad ankle, he turned this team around. That's just how great he is. Last year, everybody's like, look at the 49ers. They have all pros and superstars everywhere, absolutely everywhere. They're going to be Patrick Mahomes. Come on, the run starts now for this Niners squad. And sure enough, here you go. There's another loss for the Niners, and Patrick Mahomes again beats this Niners squad, and now he's chasing this third ever title, and it's been so unbelievable to watch. But a guy that I want to talk about is Josh Allen. I don't think we're giving him enough credit. I don't think we're giving him enough leniency in this entire situation. I know that he's 0-4 against Patrick in the biggest moments, and I look back at the one time that Pat's been beat by any active quarterback in the NFL, and that is Joe Burrow. He had a Herculean defensive effort from that Bengals squad in the second half, and now Josh Allen is consistently let down by this Buffalo defense every single year. And this year was so unbelievable to watch from Josh and from this Bills squad, because it was so reminiscent of this 2015 Cam Newton MVP year. They didn't have the weapons. It was Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis were both gone from this team. So much of that production, so much of the receivers that Josh relied on, that he made this massive step in his career with. And both of those guys were out the door. He had to rely on a rookie wide receiver in Keon Coleman. He had to rely on a guy in Matt Collins who had never really gained much traction with any team in the league, and we saw him come up big in that AFC Championship game. But I'm just looking around at Josh, and I'm like, man, when is he going to be able to get it done against Pat? And I've held Lamar to a different standard, because even though Lamar lost to Josh, he had those 2 first-half turnovers, and we're going to get into him in a second, but we're still talking about Josh right now. But for Josh, I just look at that 0-4 record against Pat as something we can't hold against him. 13 seconds, the defense is playing outside coverage, sideline coverage for some reason, 2 quick throws, and they're in field goal range and they don't even get the ball back. And this year with no weapons, with literally Josh doing everything, and I know you want to talk about the refs, maybe a lot of people want to talk about the refs. I think at the end of the day, Buffalo has to be held responsible for that win, and James Cook said it perfectly. You got to go out there and be ready to play. And when I look at this Buffalo squad, Josh Allen, I believe, is the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL right behind Joe Burrow, but I'm not holding any of these losses against him. At the end of the day, Mahomes is such a great quarterback. No quarterbacks on his watch are going to eat. That's how crazy it is. Like, Joe Burrow is the only guy that's been able to beat him. Tom Brady beat him twice. No other guy's been able to beat him. Like, you look at the talent that the NFL has at the quarterback position, especially in the AFC. Let's go down the line here. Mahomes is the top dog. Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are probably on this tier too. Lamar Jackson is a 2-time league MVP. He has not been able to beat Mahomes in the postseason. He has no postseason success. Josh Allen, probably going to win the MVP this year. Maybe one of the most talented quarterbacks when you look at sheer talent in terms of his measurables, what he can do getting outside of the pocket, inside of the pocket, how crazy of a runner he is, his mobility. He's not eating on Mahomes' watch. Joe Burrow, the only guy that's been able to beat him, I would say that he's the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL right now. He's the only guy that's been able to beat him once. And you can go down the line. C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, Bo Nix. The list goes on and on and on for Mahomes. The amount of top-tier quarterbacks in the AFC that he's been able to knock off, I just marvel at it, to be quite honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. Like, Patrick Mahomes, we're watching something unbelievable. We're watching something historic wrapped up in this, hey, let's criticize Mahomes for the refs, or let's criticize this Chiefs team because they have this Taylor Swift voodoo magic. I'm just sitting back appreciating greatness. We're watching greatness, and I do think they're going to be the first ever team to three-peat, but for Josh, it's going to happen at some point. It has to. Like, to be able to get that close every single year and the same thing happens over and over again, and you just see that look on the sideline, you're like, man, I just feel terrible for the guy. But it's like, it's gonna happen at some point. Now, I know it's probably unfair to say I feel bad for the guy. Like, he has Haley Steinfeld at home, and he's making a lot of money, and he's in a great spot right now, don't get me wrong. But I want to talk about Lamar Jackson here. Lamar Jackson is a guy that needs to be held in a different regard. Now, let me preface this here before I kind of deep dive into him. Lamar Jackson is a winner in life, and I've been very vocal about this. He has Jesus in his life. He is a man of faith. He has so much money on the side, and he's chasing victories right now. And when you're looking at the top quarterbacks in the league, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, those guys are making the big-time plays in the biggest moment when it matters the most. And I look at this Bills-Ravens game, and the narratives coming into it. Okay, Lamar's not a great postseason quarterback. Lamar has had so much success in the regular season being a two-time MVP, being a guy that is going to beat you in the regular season. That's what we saw with Buffalo. He beat Buffalo in the regular season bad. And now having Derrick Henry, there was no more excuses that this team didn't have weapons. They have Derrick Henry, who had a tremendous season, who, talking about Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, look at Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry as a backfield of two of the best runners in the league. And they had Zay Flowers this season. Now, they didn't have him in the postseason, but they had Zay Flowers. And so I'm looking at Lamar Jackson, and I'm holding him in a different regard because he only had 4 interceptions, ladies and gentlemen, the entirety of this season. He had 2 turnovers in the first half against the Buffalo Bills. Now, Lamar, he had a great second half. And I do think he's going to get there at some point. I want to say he's going to get a Super Bowl at some point because he's going to learn from this. And these are just battle scars, things that are going to help him in the long run. But let's not let him off the hook here. 2 turnovers in the first half. I looked at every other quarterback that had won that was playing on Championship Sunday. Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to know how many turnovers they combined for in the divisional round? 0. They combined for 0 turnovers in the entirety of the divisional round, whereas Lamar Jackson had 2. And I love Lamar. Lambo Lamar, my guy, Lamborghini Lamar. Didn't get it done when it mattered the most, and that's what it comes down to. It comes down to picking up those crucial 4th downs. It comes down to being accurate at all times. It comes down to being able to use your legs in the big moments when it matters the most. And Lamar had those 2 turnovers. He had the one where he was trying to extend the play, fumbled it, Von Miller picked it up and almost scored. And then he just had that one really bad interception where he just was trying to almost anticipate where his receiver was going to go. They weren't on the same page. A really bad interception. So for Lamar, he's going to figure it out. I'm not worried about him at all. I'm not worried about this Ravens squad at all. Derrick Henry will be back. Zay Flowers will hopefully be healthy in the postseason. This defense has been tremendous. I just think Lamar Jackson and this team, he's a consummate professional. He's going to continue to get better. I do believe in him, and I do believe in Josh, but I'm just going to continue to bring it back to Pat. No quarterbacks are eating on his watch. That's how absolutely wild it is. No quarterbacks are eating on his watch. We're going to transition into the NFC here with the Los Angeles Rams. I think when you look at this team, first of all, tremendous season. Nobody expected them to not only win the NFC West, to win a playoff game, and to get this close to beating the Philadelphia Eagles. And you have to look at Matthew Stafford first. You have to look at the nucleus of this team as we head into next year. Now, first of all, we're looking at Matthew Stafford. Kind of up and down in terms of him coming back for the year, but he said he's going to come back for another season, so we know that he's going to be there for one more year. Do the Rams address the quarterback position in the draft? Potentially. It's not the strongest draft for the quarterback position, but could they potentially look for a guy like maybe Jackson Dart in the 2nd round, maybe a guy like Will Howard, very accurate, 6'5", can move around, just won a national championship with Ohio State. Are the Rams going to look for the next successor to Matthew Stafford in this draft class? I believe that they will, but let's look at Puka Nacua. I believe he's a top 10 receiver in the league, and I also believe that Cooper Kupp is a borderline top 10 receiver. Now we see that the Rams are going to find a trade partner for him. They just said yesterday, Kupp, we love you, man, but we're going to trade you. And it's tough to see for the Rams because Cooper Kupp won a Triple Crown there. He almost won a Super Bowl there. Like, he had so much success with this Rams team, and you called it 9 to dime with that connection between Stafford and Kupp. And now we're not going to see it anymore. And he's expected a large sum of money. And I was talking about this with my camera guy, big Rams fan. They're probably going to get, maybe a 4th or a 5th round pick for him. Nothing crazy, but just to get that contract off their hands, I would say that they look for somebody in the draft. And this isn't really the strongest receiver draft, but I think they're going to look somewhere in the draft for a receiver. But you still have Puka. We know that he's been banged up throughout his career, so that's definitely a concern. How will Puka Nacua be next season? Can he stay healthy? As this fine gentleman is walking behind me, can Puka Nacua stay healthy next year? Because if he doesn't, and we saw this Rams team get bit with the injury bug, if he doesn't, they're in big trouble. But if they can go out and get another stud receiver to pair with Puka, I think this team is going to still be capable of winning a Super Bowl, and I think it starts with this defense. And I never imagined that 1 year ago I would be saying this about the Los Angeles Rams. Yes, their Super Bowl run starts with this defense. Now, this young defensive line with Jared Verse, Byron Young, for a rookie to go into that environment and that atmosphere and step up on the biggest moment, that was a heck of an accomplishment for him and for his call with the loss of Aaron Donald. That's what I'm saying right now. I'm so stunned that I'm saying this about the Rams because they lost arguably the greatest defensive player of all time in Aaron Donald just 1 year ago. And now we're looking at Jared Verse, a guy that was a stud, just an absolute hit in the draft. He's going to be really good for a long time to come. He's going to be a defensive player of the year type guy. And that's why the Rams should feel really good about this defense. They got to clean up a little bit of stopping the run. If there were one thing or two things that I'm looking at with this Rams team, first of all, they got to be able to run the ball a lot better with Kyren Williams. They've got to be able to stop the run, but they can rush the passer. And that's what Aaron Donald did at such a high level. Now, obviously, you can't just replicate what he did. You can't replicate his performance and his production, but if they can continue to build that D-line, continue to add linebackers in the draft, maybe add some linebackers in free agency, bolster up that front seven even more to be able to stop the run. I believe this team is good enough to contend in the NFC. I just don't think the NFC is some deep conference like everyone thinks. Ladies and gentlemen, the Rams were 2 plays away from beating the Philadelphia Eagles. And we know that the Philadelphia Eagles are here right now. They were 2 plays away from beating them. It was at 3rd down and 10, or it might have been a little bit closer. Jordan Davis comes right through, sacks Matthew Stafford, and then it was the 4th and long. If they stay on schedule or just don't have that big of a negative play, they're inside of the red zone. They can win that game. And I was just so proud and so happy with the fight that they showed that game. A team that gave up so many big-time plays in the run game. Like, if you don't have those 3 big-time runs for touchdowns, that game is completely different. And I do believe that they have a legitimate shot at winning that game. And if you guys are familiar with Caden's Corner at all, or Caden Kubler Sports Radio, I've gotten crowed and for what I believe they're capable of accomplishing next season. I think they're in store for some big-time things. But they've got to find the successor to Matthew Stafford. They have to be able to run the football. And Kyren Williams has got to stop fumbling in the biggest moments. But we just had a great conversation about quarterbacks. We had a great conversation about Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. But I want to talk about Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that another squad really that I've been focusing on so much this year, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. For them to not be in the postseason, I feel like I was robbed, ladies and gentlemen. I was devastated last year when Joe Burrow tore that ligament in his hands, and I didn't get to see him in the postseason. This year, not being able to see the Cincinnati Bengals in the postseason, I feel like I was robbed of this Mahomes-Burrow matchup that is absolute cinema. Everyone wants to focus on Josh versus Patrick. I'm focused on Joe versus Patrick. The only active quarterback in the NFL that has been able to knock off Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's not forget, let's go through his entire track record. He's been in the league for 5 years. His rookie season, he tore his ACL. His second year, he goes on the road in Arrowhead and knocks off Patrick Mahomes. The next year, he gets to the AFC Championship, and if it weren't for that late hit out of bounds, they are in overtime and have a chance again to go on the road and beat Patrick Mahomes, then the torn ligament last year. And the string of historic letdowns this season robbed us of Joe Burrow, ladies and gentlemen. They robbed us of Joe Burrow, and we'll go through the schedule here. They lost to Washington. They lost to Baltimore. They gave up more than 40 points multiple times where they scored more than 30. Think of that. This team scored more than 30 points in 3 different occasions, and they lost. That's how bad the defense was. Another occasion, they were up 14 points against the Ravens, and they gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter to the Ravens as well. That's 4 times being historically let down by this defense. Now let's look at the kicking game. They had 3 different games where bobbled snap or missed extra points or missed field goals from Evan McPherson as to why this team lost. You're looking at 6 to 7 losses just because of this defense and because of the kicking game that they lost. Like, I'm just so stunned, and it's almost like makes my blood boil because Joe Burrow is that good. This offense is that good. I think he should have won the MVP. If they win one more game and make the postseason, you're looking at the MVP. 43 touchdowns, 4,900 passing yards. What are we talking about? He led every quarterback passing stat. Jamar Chase is going to win he won the Triple Crown. He might win the Offensive Player of the Year. That's how good of an offense we're looking at here. His partner in crime, T. Higgins, might command $30+ million in free agency. That is how good this offense was. And yet we didn't get to see them in the postseason. I remember every talking head in the media was like, man, if Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals make the postseason, if you're Josh Allen, if you're Patrick Mahomes, man, you don't want to see this team. The defense may be bad. Man, you don't want to see this team. And I wanted to see him. I wanted to see him in there fighting because every year you don't get to see Joe Burrow in the postseason. You just feel robbed. And maybe you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh, you've got to be a Bengals fan. Because that's what I saw on Twitter. A lot of people are saying all these Bengals fans are unbearable because they're just hanging on to this one win that Joe Burrow had. And I just shake my head at it because that's not what it is. 2 season-ending injuries in 5 years. 2 times playing Patrick Mahomes to the wire and splitting against him. You're just not seeing any other quarterback do that. And I know he didn't win the Super Bowl because the Rams won that year, but that's where we're approaching this time in the NFL right now where it's like, okay, do you have what accolades do you have? Well, you're probably not going to have any Super Bowls because number 15 has all of those. Okay, second greatest accolade, how many times have you beat number 15? Oh, that's probably the next best accolade you can think of right now for quarterbacks in the NFC, or in the AFC, excuse me, because you're probably going to be judged on what you do in the postseason. We all know that every great quarterback is judged off of what they do in the postseason. And like I keep saying, nobody's eating. Joe Burrow beat Patrick Mahomes, and we were robbed of it this year. And that was what disappointed me the most about this NFL season. But don't get me wrong here. We have a tremendous Super Bowl between the Eagles and Chiefs. So fired up for it. But as we wind down the show here, I would normally never talk about the NBA in the middle of Radio Row, the middle of this Super Bowl week. But ladies and gentlemen, I have to. Arguably the biggest trade in NBA history. Luka Doncic, a 25-year-old superstar, a top 5 player in the National Basketball Association, a cornerstone player for a team that was in the finals last year, got traded to one of the biggest markets in all of sports in the Los Angeles Lakers. Ladies and gentlemen, the Dallas Mavericks made a massive mistake trading Luka Doncic away at 25 years old. And I've been thinking about this because I've had a lot of conversations from LA. I've had a lot of conversations with Lakers fans. Originally, I was like, okay, I like this move a little bit for the Mavericks. Like, everyone was just so black and white with it. And I understand why. Don't get me wrong. Don't go into my comments right now. Everyone was so black and white with it. But I had a little bit of optimism for the Mavericks because I think Anthony Davis at 31 years old can still play at a really high level. And with Kyrie Irving and with Klay Thompson at the 1 and 2, and with probably PJ Washington at the 3, and with AD now playing at the 4, we all know that he wanted to be at the 4 and not at the 5, and the Lakers didn't let him really have that over the past few seasons, and now they're either going to have Gafford or Lively at the 5. That's a dang good basketball team. That is a really, really good basketball team, 1 through 5. But then you look at it, you look at the other side of the coin. Everything I just mentioned about Luka Doncic, a 25-year-old superstar. And The reason why I'm so against this move, and the Mavericks GM trying to defend this was okay. He had problems with his weight. He had weight problems, and he didn't really want to listen to us about getting in shape, and he struggled on the defensive end. If you're a 25-year-old, almost arguably face of the league, one of the best players in the league, and you're only 25, I know I keep saying it, but you're 25 years old, you make it work. You make it work. They said that they didn't want to invest $350 million in him. I can understand that, but let's ignore the money piece in this, because that's just where the NBA is going. Everybody criticized the Boston Celtics a year and a half ago when they paid Jaylen Brown the highest contract in NBA history, and now he's not even in the top 5 anymore, and then Tatum got the highest contract in NBA history. That's where the NBA is going. So let's not pretend like the money was the reason why they didn't. The CBA is going. So I don't buy it. I don't buy that, hey, I'm only here for a few years. If it works out, it works out. You guys were just in the finals with Luka. Clearly the problems weren't that bad. You still have the nucleus of this team. Look at that starting 5, small forward now. This team was winning basketball games this year. I understand Luka's been injured with that calf injury, but what makes you think in a Western Conference with a Thunder squad that you beat last year, what makes you think you can't beat them? What makes you think you can't run it back against them? What makes you think that this Denver team that has really struggled this year, what makes you think you can't beat them? Like, I'm looking around the West, sure, it's a lot tougher than the East, but why can't the Mavericks do the exact same thing that they did last year with Luka? Like, I don't buy any of that. The Timberwolves, the team that they beat, they're not even in the same realm as them right now. So, I mean, it's so crazy to me. And I know it is with everybody. Like, I'm not breaking any news here. This is a wild trade. Wild. 25-year-old superstar. Wild trade. I mean, I was floored by this. We were traveling to New Orleans, and the Shams bomb comes in at almost midnight, and I couldn't believe it. Like, my good buddy called me, dude, Luka Doncic just got traded to the Lakers. Stop lying to me. No, he got traded to the Lakers. There's no way. As an NBA fan, I'm primarily NFL and college football, but as an NBA fan, this is so great for the game. Let's look at it like that, because I want to put a positive spin on it. This is so great for the game, because now you have a 25-year-old player that everybody knows about. Everybody knows LeBron James. Everybody knows that LeBron, Steph, and KD are the last 3 guys in this era that are still representing the game of basketball, that are still pulling so many fans in. The Los Angeles Lakers, like I said, one of the biggest markets in all of sports, arguably the biggest market in basketball next to Boston. They get a 25-year-old franchise-altering piece that can now be on this team for 10 to 15 years. They don't have to pay him $350 million. I think it's in the realm of 230-ish. That's unbelievable. And you're going to get the Lakers now. They're not only going to be competitive once LeBron James leaves, they're going to be competitive for the next decade. And that gets me really excited just as a basketball fan, because I think it's going to draw a lot more viewers to the game. I also had LA fans telling me they were going to buy 6 different variations of the jersey. Like, I think this is so great for the NBA, don't get me wrong. But it is mind-boggling to me that a team like Dallas, it would make sense if you were, say, maybe Sacramento, or if you were San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama, and say that you were there for a few seasons and you saw really no huge increase in production from this team or the way that they're winning basketball games. Like, this team was in the finals. They weren't struggling to make the playoffs. He had that savage shot over Rudy Gobert, and I know that his defense looked really bad in the finals, and it did. He looked like a traffic cone out there. His ability to average 30 points and 10 rebounds and 10 assists is uncanny. He's an unbelievable player, and he alone can win you, in my opinion, in the Western Conference, the way tougher conference. He can win you 50 ball games. That is how good Luka Doncic is. I'm beyond stunned that Dallas made this trade, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to be here live from Radio Row tomorrow and Thursday. I hope you guys love the stream. Want to start trying this out more often, doing some live streaming. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. We're going to be posting a ton of behind-the-scenes content here from Radio Row. Have a ton of behind-the-scenes content that we filmed at opening night yesterday. Had such a great time here in New Orleans. Still got a few more days to get ready, break down the Super Bowl for you guys. As always, my name is Caden Kubler, and thank you guys so much for tuning into Caden's Corner. See you guys.